Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Goku was reincarnated into a world without ki? Subscribe if you enjoy the video. And also check the description. So let's begin the story. The first thing Goku noticed was the ceiling. It was white, painfully, sterile white, with a small crack running from the corner like a lightning bolt frozen in time. He stared at it, confused, his mind foggy and distant as though he were waking from a dream that had lasted 1,000 years. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was light. Blinding, all-consuming light. He'd been fighting someone powerful, someone who threatened everything. Universe 7, his friends, his family. He'd pushed past his limits one final time, channeling every ounce of energy into one last attack. And then, nothing, or rather something. This. Goku tried to sit up, and immediately his body protested with a dull ache that spread through his muscles. Strange. He'd been exhausted before, pushed to the brink of death more times than he could count, but this felt different. This felt mundane, like he'd simply slept in an awkward position rather than expended universe-destroying energy. He managed to prop himself up on his elbows, looking around what appeared to be a bedroom. A small bedroom, cluttered with books stacked on a desk, posters on the walls showing people in strange outfits, and a device he didn't recognize sitting on a nightstand, flat, rectangular, glowing softly. This wasn't Otherworld. This wasn't King Kai's planet or Beerus's realm. This was Kaito. Breakfast is ready. The voice came from somewhere beyond the door, feminine, warm, with an edge of motherly impatience. Goku's head snapped toward the sound, his instincts flaring to life. But when he tried to sense the energy signature of whoever had called out, he felt nothing. Not nothing like an absence of power. Nothing like there was no energy to sense at all. Panic seized him. Goku closed his eyes, concentrating the way Master Roshi had taught him decades ago, the way he'd done 10,000 times since. He reached out with his senses, searching for ki, for life energy, for anything. Empty. Completely empty. His own energy was gone too. He couldn't feel it, couldn't access it, couldn't even detect the faintest flicker of power that should have been as natural to him as breathing. It was like someone had cut off one of his senses entirely. Like waking up and discovering you couldn't see or hear. Kaito. I'm not calling you again. That name. Kaito. Why did it feel familiar and foreign at the same time? Goku, or whoever he was now, swung his legs out of bed, and that's when he noticed his body. His arms were thin, lacking the dense muscle he'd built over a lifetime of training. His hands were smooth, unmarred by the countless scars he'd accumulated from battle. He looked down at his chest, pulling at the shirt he was wearing, soft, cotton, branded with some kind of logo, and saw the body of a teenager. Lean, yes, but untrained. Soft. He stumbled to a mirror hanging on the wall and froze. The face staring back at him was not his own. Oh, it resembled him. The same dark eyes, the same general structure, but younger. Much younger. 16, maybe 17 at most. His hair was black but styled differently, shorter and more conventional than his signature spiky mane. His face was smoother, unblemished by time and conflict. What happened to me? He whispered, and even his voice sounded different. Higher, less weathered. Memories suddenly flooded his mind like a dam breaking. Not replacing his own memories but layering over them, interweaving until he couldn't tell where Goku ended and Kaito's Sora began. He saw himself, this body, growing up in a city called Tokyo. He saw a family, a father who worked long hours at an office, a mother who filled the house with warmth and cooking, a younger sister who followed him everywhere with bright eyes full of admiration. He saw a life he never lived but somehow remembered with perfect clarity. 16 years of mundane existence. School, homework, friends, video games. A life without training, without fighting, without the constant drive to become stronger. A normal life. A human life. But underneath it all, his true memories remained intact. Grandpa Gohan finding him in the mountains. Training with Master Roshi. The World Martial Arts Tournament. Fighting Piccolo, then befriending him. Raditz arriving and revealing his Saiyan heritage. Namek. Frieza. The transformation that changed everything. Cell. Majin Buu. Beerus. tournament of power. All of it, crystal clear, playing in his mind like yesterday. He was Goku, the Saiyan raised on Earth, protector of Universe 7, and he was also Kaido Sora, an ordinary high school student in a world he didn't understand. Kaido Sora! If you don't come down right now, I'm eating your portion. The threat of lost food activated something primal in both sets of memories. Goku, Kaido, whatever he was now, rushed to the door, yanked it open, and bounded down a narrow staircase he somehow knew led to the kitchen. The smell hit him first. Rice, miso soup, grilled fish, pickled vegetables. His stomach growled with an intensity that surprised him. At least that hadn't changed. The kitchen was small but cozy, filled with morning light streaming through windows that overlooked other buildings packed tightly together. A woman stood at the counter, her back to him, wearing an apron and humming softly. She turned as he entered, and Kaido's memories supplied her identity even as Goku's heart ached with unfamiliarity. Yuki Sora. His mother. 43 years old. Worked part-time at a flower shop. Made the best katsu curry in the neighborhood. There you are, sleepyhead, she said, smiling with the kind of unconditional warmth only a mother could produce. You were up late studying again, weren't you? I heard your light on past midnight. Studying. Right. Kaido was a second-year high school student preparing for university entrance exams. Mathematics, literature, science, subjects that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. Sorry, Mom, he said automatically, the words flowing naturally despite the surreal disconnect he felt. I lost track of time. You worked too hard. She gestured to the table where breakfast was laid out. Sit, eat. Your sister already left for her club activities. Goku sat. No, Kaido sat, his body moving through routines anew by heart. He picked up chopsticks, and for a moment, he marveled at how natural the motion felt despite Goku having always been somewhat clumsy with utensils. Kaido's muscle memory guided his hands as he ate, and the food was good. Really good. Different from Chi-Chi's cooking but satisfying in its own way. His mother sat across from him with a cup of tea, watching him with that knowing look mothers had. Are you feeling all right? You seem distracted. I'm fine, he lied, shoveling rice into his mouth to avoid conversation. Just tired. She nodded but didn't look convinced. Well, don't overdo it. You're still young. You should be enjoying your youth, not just studying all the time. If only she knew he had decades of youth behind him, spent fighting the universe's strongest warriors. After breakfast, Kaido followed the morning routine his body knew instinctively. He returned to his room, changed into a school uniform, a crisp white shirt, navy blazer, dark slacks, and gathered books into a bag that felt impossibly heavy on his shoulders. In his previous life, he trained with weighted clothing that would have crushed this body instantly. Now, a bag of textbooks made him adjust his posture. The walk to school was a revelation. Tokyo was nothing like anywhere Goku had been. Buildings stretched upward in every direction, glass and steel reaching toward the sky. People packed the sidewalks, moving with purpose, eyes fixed on phones, those flat devices that Kaido's memories told him were called smartphones. Cars filled the streets, but they were quieter than he expected, many running on electricity rather than combustion. Everything was so orderly, so structured. People waited at crosswalks even when no cars were coming. They formed neat lines at train stations. They spoke in polite, measured tones. It was the opposite of everything Goku had known. No wilderness to explore. No mountains to climb. No forests where danger and adventure lurked around every corner. Just concrete, crowds, and routine. He tried again to sense ki, desperate for any connection to what he'd been. Again, nothing. The void where his power should have been felt like a missing limb, phantom pain for an ability that no longer existed. Could he still fight? Could he still access the techniques he'd spent a lifetime mastering? There was only one way to find out. Kaido ducked into a narrow alley between buildings, making sure no one was watching. He settled into the horse stance Master Roshi had drilled into him as a child, feet shoulder-width apart, knees bent, weight centered. His body protested immediately. His thighs burned after mere seconds, his balance wavered, sweat beaded on his forehead. This body was weak. Pathetically weak. He tried to throw a punch, the same straight punch he'd thrown a million times. His form was decent. Kaido's body seemed to have some natural athleticism, but there was no power behind it, no ki to channel, no energy to amplify the blow. It was just flesh and bone moving through air. Frustration bubbled up inside him. He tried again, harder this time, putting his whole body into it. The punch was slightly better but still felt like a child playing at fighting compared to what he'd once been capable of. This can't be it, he muttered, trying a kick. Then a combination. Then the movements of the Kamehameha wave, hands cupped at his side, pushing forward. Nothing. Not even a spark. The technique required ki, and ki didn't exist here. He stood in the alley, breathing hard from minimal exertion, and felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time: helplessness. When Raditz had first arrived and revealed Goku's Saiyan heritage, overpowering him with ease, Goku had felt outmatched. When Frieza had seemed invincible on Namek, he'd felt desperate. When Cell had appeared to surpass everyone, he'd felt dread, but never helpless. Because even at his weakest, he'd known he could get stronger. He could train, push his limits, find new transformations, new techniques. There was always a path forward. Here, in this body, in this world without ki, what was the path? Hey! You there! Kaido spun to find an older man standing at the alley's entrance. One of the shopkeepers, probably, in his 60s with graying hair and a stern expression. What are you doing back there? Shouldn't you be in school? Sorry, I was just wasting time, I see. Youth these days, always goofing off. Go on, get to class before you're late. Kaido bowed apologetically, another automatic gesture from Kaido's memories, and hurried back to the main street. The interaction reminded him of Master Roshi's scoldings, but without any of the underlying wisdom or humor. School was another exercise in surreal normalcy. Kaito navigated halls packed with students, finding his classroom through muscle memory alone. He took his seat by the window, naturally, because where else would the protagonist sit? His borrowed memories joked, and tried to focus as teachers droned through lessons. Mathematics, classical literature, world history that was completely different from the history he knew. Chemistry that operated on principles both familiar and alien. His mind wandered constantly. These students around him, laughing and chatting and worrying about exams and relationships. They had no idea what existed beyond their world. They'd never seen aliens or androids or gods of destruction. They'd never trained to protect the universe or push past death itself. They were just living normal, mundane, powerless lives. Was that what he was supposed to do now? At lunch, Kaido found himself approached by a group of boys from his class. Their leader was a tall student with dyed brown hair and an easy smile. Daichi, Kaido's memories supplied. One of his friends. Kaito. You were spacing out all morning. Everything okay? Yeah, just tired. You study too much, man. Come on, let's eat on the roof. I brought extra from my mom's cooking. Kaito followed them, partly because he was hungry and partly because he didn't know what else to do. The rooftop offered a view of the sprawling city, buildings extending to the horizon in every direction. Somewhere out there, normal people were living normal lives, completely unaware that in another universe, another version of existence, beings with godlike power fought for survival. The boys chatted about typical teenage concerns. An upcoming test. A girl one of them liked. A new video game release. Sports results. Kaido ate and listened, feeling like an anthropologist studying an alien culture. Hey Kaido, Daichi said between bites of rice. You're still planning to come to martial arts club today, right? We need you for the demonstration. Martial arts club. Right. Kaito had joined at the beginning of the school year, drawn by some instinct he couldn't name. According to his memories, he'd shown natural talent but lacked dedication, treating it more as casual exercise than serious training. Yeah, I'll be there. Cool. That transfer student is joining today too. The one from Osaka? I heard he's really good. Transfer student? Yeah, Akira something. Apparently, he placed in some regional tournament last year. Should be interesting to see what he's got. Martial arts. Fighting. Training. For the first time since waking in this strange new world, Kaito felt a spark of genuine interest. The afternoon classes dragged on endlessly. Kaito found himself watching the clock, counting down minutes like he used to count down the hours until the next World Martial Arts tournament. When the final bell rang, he was the first out of his seat. The martial arts club met in the school's gymnasium, a large, open space with wooden floors and mirrors along one wall. Mats were laid out in the center, and about 20 students were already changing into white training uniforms. Kaido retrieved his own GI from his locker, and as he tied the belt, he felt a strange sense of homecoming. At least this was familiar. The weight of the uniform, the bare feet on the mat, the smell of sweat and effort, these things transcended universes. The club's instructor was a stern-looking man in his 50s named Takeda-sensei, a former competitive judoka who now taught high school physical education. He called the students to attention with a sharp clap. "Listen up! We have a new member joining us today. Akira Tanaka, please step forward." A boy emerged from the changing room. Average height, lean build, with short black hair and intense eyes that immediately reminded Kaido of Krillin. There was something in his posture, in the way he moved, that suggested genuine training. Not the casual athleticism of the other club members but real, dedicated practice. Akira bowed to Takeda-sensei, then to the other students. When his eyes swept across the group, they paused on Kaido for just a moment, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Interest? Akira comes to us with an impressive record, Takeda-sensei continued. Second place in the Kansai Regional Youth Tournament, black belt in Shotokan Karate, and experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I expect you all to learn from his dedication. Some of the students murmured impressed. Others looked skeptical. Kaido just watched, curious. Now then, Takeda-sensei said, we'll begin with our usual warm-up. 20 laps around the gym, then stretching. Move! The students began jogging, and Kaido fell into line. Within 2 laps, he was breathing hard. Within 5, his legs were burning. By 10, he wanted to stop. This body was weak. Laughably, pathetically weak. In his previous life, he'd crossed Snake Way in under 2 days, running the entire 1,000,000-kilometer length without rest. He'd trained in gravity hundreds of times Earth's normal pull. He'd pushed himself beyond the limits of mortality itself. Now, he couldn't complete 20 laps around a gymnasium without feeling winded. He gritted his teeth and kept going, drawing on willpower that came from Goku's memories rather than Kaido's body. By the time he finished, he was drenched in sweat and gasping. Several other students had stopped halfway through, but Kaido had forced himself to complete the full 20. Akira, he noticed, had finished first and wasn't even breathing hard. The stretching routine was torture for Kaido's inflexible teenage muscles. Hamstrings screamed. Shoulders protested. His back felt like it might snap in half during a simple forward bend. "You're really out of shape, Sora," one of the students commented with a laugh. "Yeah, been focusing on studies," Kaido managed between breaths. After stretching, Takeda-sensei had them practice basic techniques. Punches, kicks, blocks, stances. For most of the students, this was rote repetition, movements drilled into them through countless practices. They executed the techniques with varying levels of competence, some clean and crisp, others sloppy and unfocused. Kaido watched Akira, who moved with precision that spoke of genuine mastery. Every punch was chambered correctly. Every kick had proper rotation. Every stance was stable and balanced. When it was Kaido's turn to practice, he settled into a fighting stance, and immediately felt wrong. His body didn't remember the muscle patterns. His balance was off. His center of gravity felt too high. He threw a punch, trying to replicate the form he'd used for decades, but his teenage body couldn't execute it properly. The technique was there in his mind, perfect and practiced, but the translation to physical reality fell short. It was like being a master pianist suddenly forced to play with broken fingers. "Sora, your stance is too wide," Takeda-sensei corrected, walking over. "Narrow it, and keep your weight forward." "You're too stiff." Kaido adjusted, trying to incorporate the feedback, but it felt wrong. This wasn't how Master Roshi had taught him. This wasn't the turtle school style, or any of the techniques he'd learned from countless masters across the universe. But then again, those techniques had been built for bodies that could channel ki. For beings capable of superhuman feats. This world, this body, they operated on different principles. He'd have to start over. From scratch. like a beginner. The realization was both humbling and frustrating. After basic technique practice, Takeda-sensei announced they'd do some light sparring. He paired students off, matching them by size and experience level. When he reached Kaido and Akira, he paused. Akira, you'll spar with Sora. He's been with us for several months now, so he knows the basics. Keep it light. This is about technique, not power. Akira nodded and approached Kaido on the mat. Up close, his eyes were even more intense, studying Kaido with an attention that felt familiar. It was the way Vegeta used to size him up, searching for weakness and strength in equal measure. They bowed to each other, then assumed fighting stances. Don't worry, Akira said quietly. I'll take it easy. There was no condescension in his voice, just acknowledgement of reality. He was more experienced, more skilled, and they both knew it. Takeda-sensei gave the signal to begin. Akira moved first, a probing jab that was more test than attack. Kaido tried to slip it. His mind knew exactly how to move, where to position his head, but his body was too slow. The punch stopped just short of his face. Your defense is too reactive, Akira said. Anticipate, don't respond. They reset. Akira threw another combination, jab, cross, low kick. Kaido managed to block the first two but took the kick on his thigh. It didn't hurt much. Akira was clearly holding back, but the technique was flawless. Kaido tried to counter, throwing a punch of his own. Akira weaved around it effortlessly, his head movement minimal and efficient. Then he was inside Kaido's guard, demonstrating a clean hip throw that sent Kaido to the mat. Akira controlled the descent, making sure Kaido landed safely. Your punch was telegraphed, Akira explained, offering a hand to help Kaido up. You drop your shoulder before you strike. Makes it easy to see coming. They went several more rounds. Each time, Akira demonstrated superior technique, but he did it instructively rather than dominantly. He'd show Kaido where he was open, explain what he'd done wrong, suggest adjustments. It reminded Kaido of training with Whis, being completely outclassed but learning with every exchange. By the end of practice, Kaido was exhausted but exhilarated. His body was screaming, his muscles were jelly, and he'd been thoroughly defeated. But he'd also learned more in one session than he had in months of casual club participation. As the students changed back into their school uniforms, Akira approached Kaido. You've got good instincts, he said. Your technique is rough, but there's something there. Have you trained before? Outside of club, I mean? Kaido hesitated. How could he explain that he trained for decades under multiple masters, fought beings who could destroy planets, and achieved transformations beyond mortal comprehension, all in a body he no longer had? Just, here and there, he said finally. Nothing serious. Akira studied him for a moment, and Kaido had the distinct impression he didn't believe the answer. But instead of pressing, Akira just nodded. Well, if you want to get serious about it, I know a good dojo in the city. They teach practical martial arts, MMA style, combining multiple disciplines. I train there most weekends. He pulled out a phone and showed Kaido the dojo's information. You should check it out. I think you'd benefit from real instruction. Maybe I will, Kaido said, and he meant it. They exchanged phone numbers, Kaido stumbling through the process, still unused to the device, and parted ways. The walk home was quiet, the city settling into evening as streetlights flickered on. Kaido's legs were sore, his body tired in a way that was both familiar and strange. This wasn't the exhaustion of pushing past Super Saiyan limits or surviving battles that should have killed him. This was just human tiredness. Normal fatigue from normal exercise. And yet there was something satisfying about it. He stopped at a bridge overlooking a small canal, watching the water reflect the city lights. In his previous life, he'd often take moments like this to look up at the stars, wondering what battles awaited him in the cosmos. Now, the stars were hidden by light pollution, and the battles he'd face, if any, would be on a much smaller scale. No universe-threatening villains. No gods to fight. No transformations to unlock. Just a teenage boy in a world without Ki, trying to figure out where he fit. I died, didn't I? He said aloud, though no one was around to hear. That final battle. I really died. And somehow, I ended up here. The water didn't answer. The city hummed with life around him, indifferent to his existential crisis. So what now? He continued, speaking to himself, or maybe to whatever cosmic force had put him here. I can't fight like I used to. I can't protect anyone. I'm just normal. The word tasted strange in his mouth. Normal. Goku had never been normal. Even as a child in the mountains, he'd been superhumanly strong, able to lift cars and defeat grown men. His entire life had been defined by being exceptional, by constantly pushing beyond normal limits. Now, those limits were all he had. His phone buzzed, Kaido's phone, he corrected himself, though the distinction was blurring. A message from his mother asking when he'd be home for dinner. Such a mundane, normal concern. He typed back that he'd be there soon, marveling at how the device worked, how his fingers knew which characters to press without conscious thought. As he walked the final blocks home, Kaido thought about what Akira had said. Real training. Practical martial arts. In this world, without ki, that was the peak of combat ability. Fighters who'd perfected their techniques through pure physical training, who'd mastered the mechanical principles of how the human body could generate force and speed. It wasn't Kamehameha waves or spirit bombs or instant transmission, but it was something. And if there was one thing Goku had never lost, across all his years, all his battles, all his transformations, it was the drive to improve. To get stronger, to push past his limits, whatever those limits might be. In his old life, the limit had been godhood itself. In this life, the limit was human potential, and that was a challenge worth accepting. When he arrived home, his family was already at the dinner table. His father, Hiroshi Sora, a quiet man with kind eyes, looked up from his newspaper and smiled. His sister, Emmy, 12 years old with her mother's bright expression, immediately started chattering about her day. Kaido sat down to dinner, and for the first time since waking in this world, he felt a strange sense of peace. This wasn't the family he remembered. Chi-Chi's nagging about studies, Gohan's bookishness, Godin's playful energy. This was different. Quieter. More ordinary, but it was his. Somehow, in some way he didn't understand, this was his life now. Kaido, you're smiling, his mother observed. Something good happened at school? Yeah, he said, realizing it was true. I think I found something I want to do. Oh? What's that? I want to get stronger. He caught himself, seeing their confused expressions. I mean, I want to really commit to martial arts. Serious training. His father lowered his newspaper, considering. That's a big commitment. Will it interfere with your studies? I'll balance it, Kaido promised. But I need this. I need to know what I'm capable of. His parents exchanged glances, having one of those wordless parental conversations. Finally, his mother nodded. If it's important to you, we'll support you. Just don't overdo it, okay? And keep your grades up. I will. Thank you. That night, lying in bed, Kaido stared at that same ceiling crack he'd noticed that morning. The day had been overwhelming. Waking up in a new body, discovering his powers were gone, struggling through weakness, finding a glimmer of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. He'd still be weak. He'd still be powerless by his old standards. He'd still be navigating a world he barely understood. But he'd also found something he'd lost over the years of godly power. The thrill of starting from the bottom. The excitement of having nowhere to go but up. In this world without ki, Kaido Sora, who was also somehow Goku, Saiyan warrior and protector of Earth, would discover what it truly meant to be strong, not through transformations or energy attacks, but through dedication, technique, and the indomitable spirit that defined him across universes. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since arriving in this strange new world, he felt ready for what came next. The journey was just beginning. The alarm clock's shrill beeping shattered Kaido's sleep at 4:30 a.m. For a moment, he lay there in the darkness, disoriented. In his previous life, Goku had rarely needed alarm clocks. His body had an internal rhythm honed by decades of training, waking naturally at dawn regardless of how little sleep he'd gotten. But this body, this teenage human body, wanted nothing more than to burrow deeper into the covers and ignore the persistent electronic chirping. Kaido forced himself upright, muscles protesting immediately. Yesterday's martial arts practice had left him sore in places he didn't know could be sore. His shoulders ached. His thighs burned. Even his neck felt stiff from some throw he'd taken badly. This was new. Goku had experienced soreness before. Training with King Kai at 10 times gravity had left him barely able to move for days. But senzu beans or healing tanks had always been available. Recovery had been measured in hours, not days. Now, he had nothing but time and his body's natural healing process. He silenced the alarm and sat on the edge of his bed, testing his range of motion. Rotating his shoulders produced sharp twinges. Standing up made his calves tighten uncomfortably. Even his fingers felt stiff as he flexed them. "This is pathetic," he muttered to himself, but there was no anger in the words. Just acknowledgement of reality. If he wanted to get stronger, truly stronger, he need to push through this. And more importantly, he need to understand this body's limitations before he could transcend them. Kaido changed into athletic clothes, loose pants and a shirt that Kaido's memories told him were suitable for exercise, and crept downstairs as quietly as possible. The house was silent, his family still sleeping. Good. He wasn't ready to explain why he was suddenly waking before dawn to train. The morning air was cool when he stepped outside, the sky still dark with just a hint of purple on the eastern horizon. Tokyo never truly slept. Even at this hour, he could hear distant traffic, see lights in apartment windows, catch the rumble of early trains. But his residential street was quiet enough. He started with a jog, not the explosive sprints he'd once used, racing across continents in seconds. Just a simple, steady jog down the empty street, focusing on form and breathing. His physical education memories supplied the basics. Land on the midfoot, keep your back straight, pump your arms efficiently, breathe in rhythm. Within 5 minutes, he was breathing hard. Within 10, his lungs were burning. By 15 minutes, he had to stop, hands on his knees, gulping air like he'd just run a marathon instead of maybe 3 kilometers. "Unbelievable," he gasped. "I used to cross continents. I flew faster than light. And now I can't even jog for 15 minutes. But even as frustration welled up, he remembered something Master Roshi had told him long ago, during his very first days of training. "Boy, everyone starts somewhere. Even I was once weak. The difference between a master and a novice isn't talent, it's persistence." Kaido straightened up, controlling his breathing like Kami had taught him. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Let the heart rate settle. Listen to your body. Once he'd recovered, he found a small park a few blocks from his house, just a patch of green with some exercise equipment and a children's playground. In the pre-dawn darkness, it was deserted. Perfect. He started with basic exercises. Push-ups first. He dropped into position, remembering the countless times he'd done this under Master Roshi's watchful eye, sometimes with boulders on his back or in increased gravity. He managed 15 before his arms gave out. 15. When he'd once done thousands without breaking a sweat. Sit-ups were slightly better. He managed 30 before his core screamed for mercy. Squats left his legs trembling after 20. Pull-ups on the park's exercise bar? He struggled through 5. By the time he finished this basic circuit, sweat was pouring down his face, and his muscles felt like they were made of lead. The sky had lightened to a pale blue, and early risers were beginning to appear. Elderly people doing Tai Chi, a few joggers, someone walking a small dog. Kaido found a bench and collapsed onto it, every part of his body throbbing with fatigue. This was humbling in a way nothing else had been. When he'd first met Beerus and discovered the god of destruction could defeat him with a finger, it had been shocking but not humiliating. Beerus was a god, after all. When Jiren had pushed him beyond his limits, it had been thrilling, a challenge to overcome. But this? Being defeated by basic exercises? Having his body give out for movements he'd once considered warm-ups. This was something else entirely. "You look like you're dying." Kaido's head snapped up. A figure stood nearby, Akira, dressed in running clothes and barely winded, clearly in the middle of his own morning workout. "Akira? What are you doing here?" "I live 2 streets over. I run this route every morning." He gestured to the exercise equipment. "You're starting a training routine?" "Trying to," Kaido admitted, too exhausted to be embarrassed. "Not going well." Akira sat down beside him, studying him with those intense eyes. "You pushed too hard. Your body isn't conditioned for this yet. You'll injure yourself training like that." "I heal fast," Kaido said automatically, then realized he had no idea if that was true in this body. Maybe, but that's not the point. Training isn't about destroying your body, it's about systematically stressing it so it adapts and grows stronger. There's a science to it. Akira pulled out his phone, opening an app filled with workout routines and nutrition information. You need a proper program. Progressive overload, adequate recovery, proper nutrition, otherwise, you're just hurting yourself for no reason. Kaido looked at the screen, seeing terms like hypertrophy, periodization, and macronutrient ratios. In his previous life, training had been simple. Push yourself until you break through your limits, eat until you're full, rest when you need to. The Saiyan biology had made it straightforward. This world was more complicated. Could you teach me? Kaido asked. How to do this properly? Akira considered for a moment, then nodded. Sure. But you need to be honest with me. What's your goal? General fitness? Competition? Self-defense? I want to be the strongest I can be, Kaido said, and it was perhaps the most honest thing he'd said since arriving in this world. Whatever that means in this body, in this world. I want to reach my limit. Something flickered in Akira's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. That's a good goal. Ambitious but good. Alright, I'll help you. But you have to promise to follow my guidance and not overdo it. I promise. We'll start tomorrow morning. Meet me here at 5 a.m. Bring water and wear proper training shoes. Those won't cut it. He gestured to Kaido's worn sneakers. For now, go home, eat a proper breakfast with protein, and rest. Your body needs recovery time. As Akira jogged away, Kaido felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving in this world. Hope. Not just vague optimism, but concrete hope based on a plan, a path forward. He headed home, his soreness somehow more bearable now. The rest of the day was a study in contrasts between memory and reality. During breakfast, Kaido's mother commented on his early rising. That's unusual for you. Feeling okay? Never better, he said, though his body disagreed with every movement. Just decided to start exercising in the mornings. That's wonderful. Very healthy. Just make sure you're eating enough, you're still growing. His sister Emmy looked up from her rice. Are you going to become super strong, big brother? Like in anime? The question made Kaido pause, chopsticks halfway to his mouth. If only she knew. Something like that. At school, the soreness intensified. Climbing stairs to his classroom on the 3rd floor was an ordeal. Sitting in his desk chair sent jolts through his protesting muscles. Even writing notes made his shoulders ache. During lunch, Daichi noticed him wincing. Dude, you move like an old man. What happened? Started training this morning. Overdid it. You. Training? Since when do you care about that stuff? Daichi laughed. I thought you were all about studying and getting into a good university. It was true. Kaido Sora's priorities had been academic excellence, following the path his parents had set out. Good grades, good university, good job. Martial arts club had been more social outlet than serious pursuit. But Goku's influence was changing that. I'm broadening my horizons, Kaido said diplomatically. The afternoon martial arts practice was torture. Takeda-sensei had them doing conditioning drills, running, jumping jacks, burpees, and Kaido struggled through every movement. His already sore muscles screamed in protest. Several times, he thought he might actually pass out from the exertion, but he kept going. Akira watched him throughout practice, occasionally offering quiet corrections. Your form is breaking down. Slow down and do it properly. Or you're holding your breath. Breathe through the movement. During sparring, Takeda-sensei paired Kaido with different partners, and the results were humbling. Against most of the club members, Kaido held his own. His instincts and knowledge were superior, even if his body couldn't fully execute what his mind knew. But against anyone with real training, he was thoroughly outmatched. When Akira faced him again, it was almost embarrassing. Akira's movements were economical and precise, his timing impeccable. He'd slit Kaido's attacks with minimal effort, counter with perfect technique, and constantly create situations where Kaido had no good options. It reminded Kaido of fighting with, being so completely outclassed that every exchange became a lesson in how much further he had to go. After practice, as Kaido was stretching his abused muscles, Akira approached with his phone out. I made you a beginner's program, he said, showing a detailed workout schedule. 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesdays and weekends are for active recovery and martial arts practice. Each workout focuses on different muscle groups and movement patterns. Kaido studied the schedule, seeing exercises with names he didn't recognize: Romanian deadlifts, Bulgarian split squats, dumbbell rows, overhead presses. There's also a nutrition guide, Akira continued, swiping to another screen. Your body needs proper fuel to recover and grow. Protein for muscle repair, carbohydrates for energy, healthy fats for hormone production. I calculated roughly what you need based on your size and activity level. This is incredibly detailed, Kaido said, genuinely impressed. You did all this for me? Akira shrugged. I like helping people train. Most people don't have the dedication to follow through, but something tells me you will. Besides, you've got potential. I can see it in how you move. Your technique is rough, but your fighting instinct is unusually good. If only he knew those instincts came from decades of fighting universe-threatening enemies. I'll follow it exactly, Kaido promised. Thank you, Akira. Don't thank me yet. Wait until after your first week. You'll hate me by Wednesday. That night, Kaido lay in bed unable to find a comfortable position. Every muscle ached. His body felt like it had been through a battle, and in a way, it had, a battle against its own weakness. He stared at the ceiling crack, his mind wandering to memories of other training sessions. He remembered his first days with Master Rashi, delivering milk while wearing a heavy turtle shell, the old master's seemingly bizarre methods gradually revealing their wisdom. The discomfort then had been purposeful, designed to build strength through constant resistance. He remembered the hyperbolic time chamber with Gohan, spending a year and a day, pushing both of them beyond their limits, while the crushing gravity and thin air made every movement a challenge. The bond they'd forged in that timeless space, father and son growing stronger together. He remembered training with Whis on Beerus's planet, learning that raw power meant nothing without control, that true strength came from understanding your body completely, moving with perfect efficiency rather than overwhelming force. All of those memories involved bodies that could channel ki, that could transform, that could push past mortal limitations through sheer will and alien biology. This body had none of that. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being stripped of everything, his power, his transformations, his ability to overcome challenges through increasingly ridiculous power-ups, would teach him something new, something fundamental he'd missed while flying through the cosmos at light speed, what it truly meant to be human, to struggle not against gods and monsters, but against your own limitations, to grow not through mystical energy or alien bloodlines, but through dedication, consistency, and understanding. His phone buzzed with a message from Akira. Remember, rest is part of training. Your body grows during recovery, not during the workout. Get at least 8 hours of sleep. Kaido smiled and sent back a simple thanks. He closed his eyes, and despite the soreness, sleep came easily. The next morning at 5 a.m., Kaido met Akira at the park. He'd followed the advice about proper shoes, convincing his mother to advance him some allowance to buy running shoes from a sporting goods store. They felt strange on his feet, so cushioned and supportive compared to the weighted training boots he remembered, but when he started jogging, the difference was noticeable. Akira led him through a proper warm-up, dynamic stretches, joint rotations, gradually increasing the heart rate. It was systematic and purposeful, nothing like Kaido's haphazard approach the previous day. Training starts with preparation, Akira explained as they moved through the routine. You're telling your body what's about to happen, preparing the nervous system, increasing blood flow to the muscles. Skip this, and you risk injury and poor performance. They moved to the exercises, but Akira's approach was different from what Kaido expected. Instead of pushing for maximum repetitions, Akira emphasized form and control. 5 perfect push-ups are better than 15 sloppy ones, he said, watching Kaido's form carefully. Your body learns the movement pattern. If you practice bad form, you're just reinforcing bad habits. It was slower, more deliberate than Kaido's instinct to just push through. But as they worked, he began to understand. This wasn't about destroying yourself through sheer effort. It was about teaching your body to move correctly, building a foundation that would support future growth. They did bodyweight exercises, push-ups, squats, lunges, planks. But Akira constantly adjusted Kaido's form, a slight shift in hip position, engaging the core more fully, controlling the eccentric portion of the movement. Feel that? Akira asked during a push-up. How your chest, shoulders, and triceps are all working together. That's what you want. Integrated movement, not isolated muscles. By the end of the session, Kaido was tired but not destroyed. He could still move, still function. Good first session, Akira said as they cooled down with static stretches. Tomorrow will be lower body focused. Make sure you eat properly today. Your muscles need protein to repair. Over the following days, a routine established itself. Every morning, Kaido woke at 4:30 a.m. He'd meet Akira at the park, and they'd train for an hour, sometimes bodyweight exercises, sometimes using the park's basic equipment, always with Akira's meticulous attention to form and progression. At school, Kaido found himself struggling to focus on lessons. His mind kept drifting to training, analyzing movements, thinking about how to improve. Math problems seemed trivial compared to calculating the optimal angle for a roundhouse kick. Literature discussions felt pointless when he could be studying human biomechanics. During lunch, Daichi and the others noticed the change. Kaido, you've been weird lately, Daichi said one day. All you talk about is training and fighting. Did something happen? How could Kaido explain? That he was actually an alien warrior from another universe, trapped in a teenage body, trying to reclaim even a fraction of his former strength. I just found something I'm passionate about, he said instead. Something that matters to me. But what about university entrance exams? Your grades have always been good, but if you're spending all your time exercising, I'll keep my grades up, Kaido assured him, though he wasn't entirely sure how. This is important too. Afternoon martial arts practice became more intense. Where before Kaido had coasted through, now he attacked every exercise with focus. Takeda-sensei noticed the change. Sora, your dedication has improved dramatically, the instructor observed one day. But remember, enthusiasm is good, but patience is better. Growth takes time. The one thing Goku had never been particularly good at managing. He'd always been impatient, eager to jump to the next challenge, the next transformation, the next battle. Patience had never been his strength, but this body demanded patience. Forced it, really? A week into his new training routine, Kaido woke up feeling different. The constant soreness had lessened. His muscles weren't screaming quite as loudly. When he did his morning exercises with Akira, he managed 2 more push-ups than the previous session. 3 more squats. Held a plank for 15 seconds longer. Small improvements. Tiny, almost imperceptible gains, but gains nonetheless. You're adapting faster than I expected, Akira commented after their session. Your body must have decent genetic potential, or you're recovering well. Maybe both. Kaido wondered if some trace of his Saiyan biology had translated to this new form. Saiyans adapted quickly to challenges, growing stronger after each battle, each near-death experience. Could that trait have survived the transition somehow? Or was this just what dedicated human training looked like? That afternoon, Akira kept his promise about the dojo. After martial arts club, he led Kaido through Tokyo's streets to a neighborhood Kaido didn't recognize from his borrowed memories. The buildings here were older, more traditional, nestled between modern structures like remnants of a previous era. The dojo was on the 2nd floor of a nondescript building, marked only by a small sign in Japanese, Yamamoto Combat Sports. They climbed narrow stairs that opened into a large training space. The floor was covered in puzzle mats, and various equipment lined the walls: heavy bags, speed bags, weight racks, grappling dummies. A boxing ring occupied one corner. Along another wall, mirrors allowed practitioners to watch their form. About a dozen people were training, men and women of various ages, all moving with the purpose of serious martial artists. Some worked the bags, strikes echoing through the space. Others grappled on the mats, working through submission attempts and escapes. A few shadowboxed in front of the mirrors, perfecting combinations. This is nothing like school club, Kaido murmured, watching a particularly intense sparring session in the ring. That's the point, Akira said. School club is fine for basics, but if you want to really learn to fight, you need this. Real pressure, real resistance, training with people who've been doing this for years. An older man approached them, maybe in his 50s, with graying hair tied back, a nose that had clearly been broken multiple times, and the solid build of someone who'd been training their entire life. "Akira," he greeted warmly. "And you brought a friend? Sensei, this is Kaido Sora. He wants to learn." The man, Yamamoto-sensei, Kaido presumed, studied him with eyes that missed nothing. It reminded Kaido of how Whis would look at him, seeing through his power level to the fighter beneath. "Have you trained before, Sora?" "Just school martial arts club," Kaido said, which was technically true for this body. "But I want to learn properly. Everything, striking, grappling, whatever it takes to really understand fighting." "Everything?" Yamamoto-sensei's lips quirked in a slight smile. "That's ambitious. Most people want to specialize. Why do you want to learn everything?" "Because I used to fight enemies who could destroy planets, and I need to understand what combat means when you strip away all the superhuman elements." "Because I don't know what I don't know," Kaido said instead. "I want to be complete." Yamamoto-sensei nodded slowly. "Honest answer. Alright, Sora. Let's see what you have. Change into training clothes. There's a locker room through that door, and meet me on the mats." 10 minutes later, Kaido stood on the mats in shorts and a fitted shirt the dojo provided for newcomers. Around him, the other fighters had paused their training to watch. Apparently, evaluating new students was something of a spectacle. Yamamoto-sensei stood opposite him, barefoot and relaxed. Despite his age, he moved with the fluid ease of a master. "Attack me," he said simply. "However you want. Show me what you can do." Kaido settled into a fighting stance, still not perfect, but improving after weeks of training with Akira. His body felt loose, ready, humming with the kind of nervous energy he remembered before tournament matches. He threw a jab, testing. Yamamoto-sensei slipped it with minimal movement, his head shifting just enough for the punch to miss. Kaido followed with a cross, then a low kick, a combination Akira had taught him. Again, minimal movement. The cross missed. The kick was checked almost casually. And suddenly Yamamoto-sensei was inside his guard, one hand controlling Kaido's lead arm, the other positioned at his throat. "Dead," Yamamoto-sensei said simply, then reset. Again. They went through this pattern repeatedly. Kaido would attack with various combinations, trying different angles and techniques. Each time, Yamamoto-sensei would effortlessly defend and counter, demonstrating perfect timing and positioning. It was humbling but not discouraging. Kaido had been outclassed before, by Rashi, by Korin, by Kami, by Piccolo, by countless others. Each time, he'd learned and grown. After about 5 minutes, Yamamoto-sensei stepped back. "Enough. You have unusual instincts, your timing isn't bad, and you read attacks well. But your technique is unrefined, and your body hasn't developed the conditioning to execute properly." He turned to address the room. "Who wants to work with him?" Several hands went up. Yamamoto-sensei pointed to a woman in her late 20s with short hair and the lean, muscled build of a dedicated fighter. "Yuki, take him through basic striking. Focus on fundamentals, jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Don't let him develop bad habits." For the next hour, Kaido worked with Yuki, who proved to be a patient but demanding instructor. She broke down each punch into its component parts: weight transfer, hip rotation, shoulder movement, fist alignment, and had him practice until the movements started feeling natural. "You're rushing," she'd say, stopping him mid-combination. "Speed comes later. First, you need to build the neural pathways. Your brain needs to learn the movement before your body can execute it quickly." It was different from anything Goku had experienced. His previous training had been more about endurance and power, Master Rashi making him deliver milk, Kami having him chase bubbles, King Kai teaching him the Kaioken through sheer repetition. This was systematic, scientific. Understanding how joints moved, how muscles activated, how force transferred through the kinetic chain. By the end of the session, Kaido's arms felt like rubber and sweat soaked through his shirt. "Good first day," Yuki said, offering a fist bump. "You've got potential, but you need to put in the hours. Nothing replaces mat time." As Kaido and Akira left the dojo, the sun was setting, painting Tokyo's skyline in shades of orange and purple. "So?" Akira asked. "What did you think?" I think, Kaido said slowly, I have so much to learn it's almost overwhelming. But also, exciting? Like standing at the base of a mountain and knowing the climb will be hard but worth it, Akira smiled. That's the right attitude. Most people want shortcuts, quick results. Real martial arts takes years to master. Decades, really? And you're never really done learning. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, navigating through crowds of people heading home from work, the city alive with evening energy. Can I ask you something? Akira said eventually. You move sometimes like you've done this before. Not the techniques. Those you're clearly learning, but the way you carry yourself, the way you read distance and timing. Where does that come from? Kaido considered his answer carefully. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like muscle memory from a dream? Or instinct from somewhere I can't quite remember? It was as close to the truth as he could get. Akira accepted this with a nod. Well, whatever it is, it's an advantage. Most beginners don't have that kind of natural sense. Use it. 2 weeks into his training regimen, Kaito noticed his body beginning to change. Not dramatically, nothing like the explosive transformations he remembered, no sudden surges of power. But gradually, consistently, his body was adapting. His shoulders had begun to develop visible definition. His core was firmer, the vague outline of abdominal muscles becoming evident. His legs, constantly worked through squats and running, showed improved muscular development. More importantly, the exercises that had destroyed him initially were becoming manageable. Push-ups that had left him gasping now felt challenging but doable. Runs that had winded him completely were now just good cardio workouts. His body was adapting. At school, even his classmates noticed. During a physical education class one day, they were tested on various fitness metrics. Kaido shocked himself, and everyone else, by performing near the top of the class in almost every category. Sora, when did you become athletic? The PE teacher asked, genuinely surprised. Your scores from the beginning of term were average at best. I've been training, Kaido said simply, but the improvement went beyond just physical changes. His understanding of fighting was evolving too. At the dojo, Yamamoto-sensei had him work with different partners, exposing him to various styles and body types. A tall kickboxer who used range advantage. A stocky judoka who lived for the clinch. A Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner who could submit him from seemingly impossible positions. Each sparring session was a lesson in humility and education. He learned that size mattered in ways it hadn't when he could power through with ki. That technique could overcome strength, but strength plus technique was even better. That positioning was everything. A smaller, weaker fighter could dominate a stronger opponent by controlling distance and angles. Fighting is chess with violence, Yamamoto-sensei told him one day after Kaido had been thoroughly outmaneuvered by a lighter but more experienced fighter. Every action creates a reaction, opens one opportunity while closing another. The fighter who sees the board more clearly usually wins. Kaido absorbed it all like a sponge. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, he found himself alone on the dojo mats, the space quiet after everyone else had left. He moved through combinations slowly, feeling each movement, understanding how his body generated force. This was nothing like channeling ki into a Kamehameha wave. There was no energy gathering in his palms, no power building until it exploded outward in a devastating blast. This was just mechanics. Physics. The human body as a machine that could be optimized through understanding and practice. And yet, there was something beautiful about it. A perfectly executed punch, weight transferring from the ground, through the legs, rotating the hips, extending the shoulder, the fist landing with precise timing, was its own kind of art. Not as flashy as a Super Saiyan transformation, but pure in a way those power-ups had never been. You're staying late. Kaito turned to find Yamamoto-sensei watching from the doorway. Just practicing. Trying to understand. The older man walked onto the mats, his footsteps soft despite his size. Understanding what? Everything? Kaito laughed slightly. How to make this body do what I want. How to fight without. He'd almost said without ki. Without what? Yamamoto-sensei prompted. Without relying on things I don't have, Kaito finished. Natural talent, size advantage, years of experience. How do I get better when I'm starting from so far behind? Yamamoto-sensei regarded him thoughtfully. You know what I see when I watch you, Sora? I see someone who's experienced something profound. Not fighting experience. You're clearly a beginner in that regard, but life experience. You move like someone who's lost something precious and is trying to find their way forward. The observation was so accurate that Kaido couldn't respond immediately. Most young people your age, Yamamoto-sensei continued, they train because they think it's cool, or want to win trophies, or prove something to someone. But you? You train like you're searching for something, like fighting is a question you need to answer. Is that bad? Kaido asked quietly. No. It makes you dangerous in the best possible way. Because people training for external reasons, trophies, recognition, revenge, they eventually lose motivation. But people training for internal reasons, they never stop. They can't stop. Yamamoto-sensei placed a hand on Kaido's shoulder. Whatever you're searching for, I hope you find it. But remember, the journey is more important than the destination. The fighter you become through training matters more than any answer you might find. After Yamamoto-sensei left, Kaido stayed on the mats for another hour, moving through techniques in the empty dojo. He thought about transformation, not the Super Saiyan kind, but the fundamental change happening to him day by day. Each workout was breaking down his body slightly, and each recovery was building it back a tiny bit stronger. Each sparring session revealed weaknesses, and each subsequent training addressed those gaps. It was slow. Frustratingly, agonizingly slow compared to the explosive growth he remembered. But it was real, and somehow, that made it more meaningful. When he finally headed home that night, walking through Tokyo's lit streets, Kaido felt something he hadn't experienced since arriving in this world, contentment. Not happiness exactly, and certainly not satisfaction. He was still weak, still had mountains to climb, still struggled with the gulf between what his mind knew and what his body could execute. But he was moving forward. Growing. Becoming something. Not Goku, the legendary Super Saiyan who could shake universes. But Kaido Sora, a human teenager learning what it truly meant to be strong when strength had to be earned through dedication rather than transformation. And perhaps, in the end, that was a greater challenge worth accepting. The journey had only just begun, and the path ahead was long. But for the first time, Kaido felt ready to walk it. 3 months into his training, Kaido stood in front of his bedroom mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. The soft, undefined teenager who'd woken up in this world was gone. In his place stood someone leaner, harder, with visible muscle definition in his arms and shoulders. His core showed the clear outline of abdominal muscles. His legs had thickened with functional strength. Even his face looked different. More focused, more present, as if the training had sharpened not just his body but his entire being. But the physical changes, impressive as they were, weren't what struck him most. It was his eyes. They held a determination that bridged both his lives. Goku's endless drive to improve and Kaido's desperate need to prove he could be strong even without ki. That combination had forged something new, something uniquely his own. Kaido. Breakfast. His mother's voice carried up the stairs, as it did every morning. He pulled on his school uniform, the blazer fitting slightly tighter across the shoulders now, and headed downstairs. The pre-dawn training sessions with Akira had become such a routine that his family had adjusted their schedules around it. His mother now woke early to prepare a more substantial breakfast, understanding that her son needed proper fuel for the intensity of his training. At the table, his father looked up from his newspaper. There's an envelope for you from school. Something about a tournament? Kaido's hand paused halfway to his rice bowl. Tournament? The Autumn Martial Arts Club tournament, his sister Emmy said excitedly, bouncing in her seat. Are you going to compete, big brother? Are you going to win? His mother slid the envelope across the table. Kaido opened it to find a registration form for the Tokyo Metropolitan High School Martial Arts Tournament, a competition bringing together martial arts clubs from schools across the city. The event would showcase various styles, karate, judo, taekwondo, and mixed divisions. Takeda-sensei is recommending you for the mixed division, his mother said, having clearly already read it. He says you've shown remarkable improvement, and should test yourself against competitors from other schools. Kaido stared at the form, memories flooding back. Tournament competition had once been such a huge part of his life. The World Martial Arts Tournament, where he'd first met Krillin and learned from Master Roshi. The Cell Games. The Tournament of Power, where the fate of entire universes hung in the balance. Those had been grand stages where godly power clashed in spectacular fashion. This was a high school martial arts tournament. The scale was laughably different. And yet, his heart rate increased with something that felt suspiciously like excitement. "What do you think?" his father asked. "It's your decision, but this could look good on university applications. Shows well-rounded development, commitment, discipline, always practical," his father. Always thinking about the future in concrete, measurable terms. But Kaido wasn't thinking about university applications. He was thinking about standing on a mat across from an opponent, testing the strength he built in this new body, discovering what he was truly capable of without ki, without transformations, without any of the advantages he'd once taken for granted. "I'll do it," he said, signing the form before he could overthink it. "When is it?" 6 weeks, his mother said. November 15th. 6 weeks. That was both a lot of time and no time at all. That morning's training session with Akira had a different energy to it. "Tournament, huh?" Akira said when Kaido told him about the registration. They were at their usual spot in the park, the sky just beginning to lighten with dawn. "That's good timing. You've built a solid foundation. Now you need to test it under pressure. Have you competed in these before?" Kaido asked as they warmed up. "Yeah, last year. Placed second in my division. Lost in the finals to a third year from a school with a really strong judo program." Akira demonstrated a stretch, and Kaido mirrored it. "These tournaments are interesting because they mix styles. You might face a karate specialist one round, a judoka the next, then someone doing kickboxing. It's not quite MMA, but it rewards well-rounded skills. What should I focus on?" "Everything," Akira laughed. "But seriously, your striking has improved a lot, but your ground game is still weak. If someone takes you down, you're in trouble. We should dedicate more time to grappling defense." Over the following weeks, Kaido's training intensified with purpose. Morning sessions with Akira focused increasingly on wrestling and submission defense. Akira would shoot for takedowns, fast, explosive movements that closed distance before Kaido could react, and work on teaching him how to sprawl, how to maintain balance, how to escape when someone had control. It was frustrating work. Goku's memories included fighting opponents who could fly, who could teleport, who could move faster than light. But none of that had prepared him for someone grabbing his legs and tripping him to the ground, then using leverage and positioning to control him completely. "Stop trying to muscle out of it," Akira would say, releasing a hold so they could reset. "You're wasting energy. Grappling is about leverage and technique. A smaller, weaker person can control a stronger opponent if they know what they're doing." The concept was simultaneously humbling and fascinating. At Yamamoto's dojo, the training became more focused as well. When Yamamoto-sensei learned about the tournament, he adjusted Kaido's training accordingly. "School tournaments have specific rules," he explained. "No strikes to the back of the head, no knees or elbows to a downed opponent, no small joint manipulation. You need to know what's legal and develop a game plan that works within those constraints." He paired Kaido with Yuki, who had experience competing in similar tournaments. "Rule sets change everything," she told him during one session. They were working on clinch fighting, the mid-range where striking and grappling blurred together. In a street fight or MMA, you might throw a knee when someone shoots for your legs. In this tournament, that's illegal. So you need different defenses. She demonstrated, repeatedly shooting for takedowns and having Kaido work on proper defensive technique, head position, hand fighting, sprawling. Each attempt revealed weaknesses in his defense, gaps in his understanding. "Your problem," Yuki said after taking him down easily for the 10th time, "is you're thinking too much about individual techniques. You know how to sprawl, how to underhook, how to frame, but you're not connecting them. Fighting isn't a collection of techniques. It's a language. You need to speak in sentences, not individual words." The observation struck Kaido deeply. It was similar to something Whis had once told him about Ultra Instinct, that true mastery wasn't about thinking through techniques but letting the body move naturally, fluidly, without conscious thought. But achieving that required countless repetitions, drilling movements until they became instinctive. So that's what he did. At school, word spread quickly that Kaido had entered the tournament. Seriously? Daichi said during lunch, nearly choking on his food. You've been training for like 3 months, and you're entering a city-wide competition? That's insane. Takeda-sensei recommended it, Kaido said with a shrug, though he knew that wasn't the full truth. The sensei had recommended it, yes, but Kaido had been eager to accept. The competitor in him, that part that would always be Goku, needed this. You're going to get destroyed, one of the other students said, not unkindly. These tournaments, the serious schools bring their best fighters. People who've been training their whole lives. Maybe, Kaido agreed. But I won't know unless I try. The martial arts club became more serious in their preparation too. Takeda-sensei announced that several club members would be competing, and he structured practices around tournament preparation. Controlled sparring, he announced one day. 3-minute rounds, school tournament rules. This is about building experience, not winning or losing. Pay attention to what works against different styles. Kaido found himself rotating through partners, and the variety was educational. Against fellow students from his own school, he held his own reasonably well. His improved conditioning and technique showed. He wasn't dominant, but he was competitive. Then came a joint practice session with a neighboring school. Takeda-sensei had arranged for several schools to train together, giving students exposure to unfamiliar opponents before the tournament. The visiting schools brought fighters who looked older, more experienced, more dangerous. One of them was a girl named Hana Nakamura. She stood maybe 165 centimeters tall, with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and the wiry, compact build of someone who'd been training seriously for years. When she stepped onto the mat for sparring, her movement quality was different from anyone Kaido had faced, more refined, more purposeful. Nakamura, Takeda-sensei said, 3rd year from Sakura High. 2-time division champion. She's agreed to work with some of our students. They bowed to each other, and Kaido immediately noticed her eyes, sharp, analytical, missing nothing. She studied him the way a chess master might study a board, already calculating several moves ahead. When the match started, she didn't rush in. She circled, feinting, measuring distance, reading how Kaido reacted to different stimuli. It reminded him of how Piccolo used to fight, patient, methodical, always thinking. Kaido threw a probing jab. She slipped it easily, countered with a sharp straight punch that snapped his head back. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make a point. Her speed was superior. He tried a combination, jab, cross, low kick, techniques he'd drilled thousands of times. She checked the kick and closed distance, getting into the clinch before he could reset. Suddenly he was dealing with knees to his midsection, pulled, but he felt the technical precision, elbows framing his face, her controlling his posture completely. When he tried to create space, she smoothly transitioned to a throw, using his own movement against him. He hit the mat, and she was immediately in a dominant position, demonstrating how she could advance to mount or take his back. The entire exchange lasted maybe 30 seconds. Reset, Takeda-sensei called. They went again. And again. Each time, Hana found different ways to defeat him. Sometimes she'd counter-strike, her hands faster and more accurate than his. Sometimes she'd time a takedown perfectly, catching him mid-technique. Once, she caught him in an armbar so quickly he didn't even realize he was in danger until it was too late. But here's what struck Kaido. She wasn't just beating him. She was teaching him. After each exchange, she'd pause and explain. You drop your hand after the jab. That's why I can hit you with the straight. Keep your guard up. Or your stance is too square when you kick. Turns you into an easy target for takedowns. Angle off after you strike. By the end of their sparring session, Kaido was exhausted, humbled, but oddly exhilarated. He'd been completely outclassed, but unlike with Akira or Yamamoto-sensei, who were so far beyond him it felt like different species, Hana was closer to his level. Advanced, yes. Clearly superior, absolutely. But close enough that he could see the path from where he was to where she stood. You've got decent instincts, she said as they bowed at the end. But you're still thinking too much. Your techniques are separate in your mind. Striking is striking, grappling is grappling. You need to blend them. Make it all one thing. How do I do that? Mat time. Repetition. There's no shortcut. She smiled slightly. But you're improving fast. I can tell you're new to serious training, but your foundation is getting solid. Keep at it, and you'll be competitive. After the joint practice, Kaido found Akira waiting for him outside the gym. Saw your matches with Nakamura, Akira said as they walked toward the train station. She's good, right? Really good. Made me look like a complete beginner. She's been training since she was 6. Competition experience going back a decade. That kind of expertise takes time to develop. Akira glanced at him. But you know what's interesting? You didn't get discouraged. Most people would be demoralized after getting dominated like that. You looked energized. Kaido considered this. He had felt energized. Because getting beaten by someone more skilled wasn't discouraging, it was illuminating. It showed him what was possible, what he could aspire to become. I guess I like knowing there's room to grow, he said finally. That's the right mindset, Akira agreed. Listen, the tournament is in 4 weeks. Want to increase our training frequency? I can meet you evenings too, not just mornings. You'd do that? Of course. You're my project now, Akira grinned. Plus, training partners push each other. Helping you improve helps me improve. That's how it works. The next month passed in a blur of training, school, and more training. Kaido's life developed a rhythm. Wake at 4:30 a.m., train with Akira until 6:30, quick shower and breakfast, school until 3 p.m., martial arts club until 5 p.m., quick dinner, evening session at Yamamoto's dojo until 9 p.m., home to study for an hour, sleep, repeat. His mother worried about the schedule. You're pushing yourself too hard. You need rest. I rest on Sundays, Kaido assured her, which was technically true. Sundays he only trained once, in the morning, spending afternoons on schoolwork and family time. His grades, surprisingly, hadn't suffered. If anything, they'd improved slightly. The discipline and focus required for training had bled into his studies. His mind felt sharper, more organized. But it was his body that showed the most dramatic changes. 4 months of consistent training had transformed him. His arms had real definition now, biceps and triceps clearly visible. His shoulders had developed that rounded, athletic look. His core was solid, abs visible even without flexing. His legs were thick with muscle from countless squats, lunges, and kicks. More importantly, his movement quality had improved dramatically. He didn't think about techniques anymore, they just flowed. His body had internalized the patterns through repetition, developing that quality Yuki had called speaking in sentences. At the dojo, Yamamoto-sensei noticed the progression. You're becoming a fighter, he told Kaido one evening after a particularly good sparring session. Not just someone who knows techniques, but an actual fighter. There's a difference. What's the difference? Kaido asked, genuinely curious. Techniques are tools. A fighter knows which tool to use when, how to transition between tools, how to create situations where their tools work best. You're starting to see the chessboard, not just the individual pieces. The praise meant more than Kaido expected. Yamamoto-sensei wasn't someone who gave compliments lightly. 2 weeks before the tournament, Takeda-sensei organized a final joint practice session, this time bringing together 5 schools. Creating a mini-tournament environment where students could experience the pressure of competing in front of crowds. Kaido found himself in the bracket, facing opponents he'd never met from schools he'd never trained with. His first match was against a taekwondo specialist, a tall, rangy fighter who loved high kicks. The boy's flexibility and speed were impressive, his kicks snapping out with power and precision. But Kaido had learned. He didn't try to match the kicking game. Instead, he closed distance, pressuring forward, taking away the space the taekwondo fighter needed to operate. When kicks came, he blocked or absorbed them, accepting minor damage to eliminate the other fighter's primary weapon. In the clinch, the taekwondo specialist had no answers. Kaido controlled the head position, landed knees to the body, pulled, but scoring points, and eventually secured a clean trip takedown. On the ground, his improved grappling skills allowed him to advance position and secure a submission setup. The referee called the match. Kaido won. His second match was against a judoka, stocky, powerful, with a low center of gravity and grips like iron. The moment they engaged, the judoka secured a dominant collar tie and started working for throws. This was Kaido's weakest area. His takedown defense had improved, but against the specialist, he was still vulnerable. The judoka hit a beautiful hip throw, and suddenly Kaido was airborne, the world spinning before he crashed onto the mat. But here's what Kaido had learned: getting taken down wasn't the end. It was just a position change. He immediately worked to guard, preventing the judoka from advancing. When the judoka tried to pass, Kaido used techniques Akira had drilled into him: shrimping, framing, creating angles. The judoka was better on the ground, no question. But Kaido was improving, and he managed to survive the round without being submitted, even landing a few strikes from his back. The match went to the judoka on points, but Takeda-sensei looked pleased afterward. 3 months ago, you'd have been submitted in 30 seconds, he said. Now you're surviving against specialists. That's progress. His third match was against someone from Sakura High, not Hana, but one of her teammates, a second-year boy with a similar well-rounded style. This match was competitive. They were evenly matched in most areas, trading positions and techniques, both finding success and struggling in turns. The match went the full 3 minutes, and the judges declared it a draw. Afterward, the boy bowed respectfully. You're good. Nakamura-senpai mentioned you, said you were improving fast. She wasn't wrong. The comment filled Kaido with unexpected warmth. Hana had noticed him? Had talked about him? As if summoned by thought, Hana appeared, having finished her own matches. She'd won all of them decisively, of course. Sora, she greeted him with a small nod. You did well today. Your ground game has improved a lot. Thanks to good coaching, Kaido said, gesturing to where Akira stood talking with Yamamoto-sensei. They'd both come to observe the practice matches. Your coach is Tanaka? Hana looked impressed. He's got a good reputation. Trained at Yamamoto's dojo, right? You know it? Everyone serious about martial arts in Tokyo knows Yamamoto's, she said. It's one of the best combat sports gyms in the city. You're lucky to train there. They talked for a few more minutes, and Kaido found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Hana was different from most people he'd met in this world, focused, dedicated, speaking about fighting with the kind of passion he remembered from his own past. She understood what it meant to dedicate yourself to improvement, to find meaning in the struggle. Are you entering the tournament? She asked. Yeah. Mixed division. Me too. Maybe we'll match up. She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. That would be interesting. I'd get to see how much you've really improved. After she walked away, Akira appeared at Kaido's shoulder. Making friends with the competition? She's really good, Kaido said. I hope I get to fight her. I'd learn a lot. You'd also probably lose, Akira said pragmatically. But yeah, you'd learn. That's the right attitude. The week before the tournament, Yamamoto-sensei changed Kaido's training approach. No more hard sparring, he announced. We're in the tapering phase now. Light technical work, maintaining conditioning, letting your body recover so you're fresh for competition. It went against every instinct Kaido had. The tournament was coming. Shouldn't he train harder, push more, prepare with maximum intensity? Your body needs recovery time, Yamamoto-sensei explained, seeing Kaido's confusion. You've been training hard for months. You've accumulated fatigue. If you push hard this final week, you'll show up to the tournament tired and flat. Smart athletes taper, reduce volume and intensity so they peak at the right time. So Kaido followed the program, even though it felt wrong. Light technical drilling. Moderate conditioning work. Lots of stretching and mobility exercises. Adequate sleep. Proper nutrition. By the day before the tournament, he felt restless, almost anxious. His body was buzzing with energy, eager to move, to fight, to test itself. That's how you know the taper worked, Akira told him. They were at a coffee shop near the tournament venue, which would be held at a large sports complex in central Tokyo. You should feel fresh, energetic, ready to perform. That's the whole point. That night, Kaido could barely sleep. Not from anxiety. He'd faced far more intimidating situations than a high school tournament, but from anticipation. He kept visualizing matches, running through scenarios, imagining different opponents and how he'd adapt his strategy. Around 2 a.m., he gave up on sleep and instead sat in meditation, using breathing techniques to calm his mind. He thought about how far he'd come in 4 months, From a weak teenager who couldn't jog for 15 minutes to a competitor preparing for a citywide tournament. From someone who couldn't execute basic techniques to a fighter developing their own style. It wasn't the same as training to face Frieza or Cell or Jiren. The scale was completely different, but in its own way, it mattered just as much, because this wasn't about saving the universe or protecting the Earth. This was about proving something to himself, that he could be strong in this world, in this body, by these rules, that even without ki, without transformations, without the advantages of Saiyan biology, he could still be a fighter. Tournament day arrived with perfect autumn weather, cool, crisp, with clear blue skies. The Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Complex was massive, with multiple competition areas running simultaneously. Hundreds of students from schools across the city filled the venue, competitors warming up while friends and families filled the spectator sections. Kaito arrived with his school's team, about a dozen students total across different divisions. Takeda-sensei gathered them for a final briefing. "Remember, winning isn't everything," he said. "This is about testing yourselves, learning from the experience, representing our school with honor. Fight smart, stay safe, and regardless of results, you're all winners for having the courage to compete." The speech was nice, but Kaito barely heard it. His attention was on the competition brackets posted on large boards. He found his name in the mixed division, one of 32 competitors in his bracket. His first match would be against someone from a school he didn't recognize. Good. An unknown opponent meant no preconceptions, no strategy based on prior knowledge. Just pure reaction and adaptation. Akira appeared, having come to observe despite not competing himself. He'd aged out of the high school division. "Nervous?" "Excited," Kaito corrected. "There's a difference. Good. Use that energy. Remember everything we've worked on, but don't overthink. Trust your training." Yamamoto-sensei arrived shortly after, along with Yuki and several other students from the dojo who'd come to support him. Their presence was grounding, reminding Kaito that he wasn't alone in this. He had a team, a support system, people who'd invested in his improvement. When his name was called for the first match, Kaito made his way to the mat. The competition area was surrounded by spectators, judges seated at a table, a referee standing in the center. His opponent was already there, a boy about Kaito's size, looking confident but not arrogant. They bowed to each other, to the judges, to the referee. "Hajime." "Begin." The match started, and everything else fell away. His opponent moved first, closing distance with quick footwork and throwing a combination, jab, cross, roundhouse kick. "Solid fundamentals," Kaito noted distantly. He slipped the punches, checked the kick, countered with his own straight punch that landed cleanly on the torso. Points scored. They reset. His opponent was more cautious now, circling, feinting. Kaito waited patiently, remembering Hana's advice about not rushing. Let the opponent show their game, then adapt. When the next exchange came, Kaito was ready. He anticipated the jab, slipped inside, secured a clinch position. His opponent struggled against the tie-up, trying to create space, but Kaito had become comfortable in this range. He landed 2 knees to the body, pulled but scoring, before stepping back. Another point. The pattern continued. His opponent was skilled, but Kaito had faced better in training. More importantly, his 4 months of intense preparation had given him a kind of calm confidence. He wasn't worried about winning or losing. He was simply fighting, reading his opponent, responding to what the moment required. When the final bell rang, Kaito won on points decisively. They bowed, and his opponent smiled. "You're really good. Good luck in the next round." The second match was harder. His opponent was a karate specialist with lightning-fast hands and excellent distance management. Kaito struggled to close the gap, eating several clean strikes before he adjusted his strategy. Instead of trying to force the clinch, he worked behind his jab, gradually cutting off the ring, limiting the karate fighter's mobility. When he finally secured the clinch, he made it count, scoring with a clean throw that put his opponent on their back. His improved ground skills allowed him to advance to mount and threaten a submission before time ran out. Another victory. The third match brought him against a wrestler, someone with obvious grappling specialization and relentless pressure. From the opening bell, the wrestler shot for takedowns, forcing Kaito to constantly defend, to sprawl, to fight for underhooks. It was exhausting work, and several times the wrestler succeeded in dragging him down. But Kaito's takedown defense had improved enough that he could get back to his feet, and his conditioning held strong. When opportunities appeared, he landed strikes, sharp punches and kicks that scored points even as he defended takedowns. The match was close, could have gone either way, but the judges awarded it to Kaito by a narrow margin, 3 wins. That put him in the quarterfinals. Top 8 out of 32 competitors. Between matches, Akira provided water and advice. You're doing great. Stay calm, stick to your game. Don't try anything fancy. Yamamoto-sensei was more analytical. Your striking defense needs work. You're eating too many shots. Tighten your guard between exchanges. And when you clinch, control the head more actively. You're giving up position too easily. The constructive criticism was exactly what Kaito needed. Not just praise, but honest assessment of what could improve. His quarterfinal match was against a judoka who immediately proved why they'd advanced this far. From the moment they gripped up, Kaito felt the power and technical precision of a serious grappler. The judoka hit a throw within the first 20 seconds, and suddenly Kaito was fighting from his back. This was survival mode. The judoka tried to pass his guard, to advance to more dominant positions. Kaito used every technique Akira had drilled into him, framing, hip escaping, creating angles. He survived the first onslaught, and managed to work back to his feet. The rest of the match was a war. The judoka would take him down, Kaito would scramble back up. He'd land strikes, the judoka would close distance for another throw. Back and forth, either able to fully dominate. When the final bell rang, both fighters were exhausted, hands on knees, gulping air. The judges deliberated longer than usual. Finally, they announced their decision. Kaito won, barely, on points accumulated from strikes and takedown defense. The judoka bowed deeply. Excellent match. You're very tough. Kaito returned the bow with equal respect. You almost had me several times. You're really skilled. That match had pushed him to his absolute limit. His conditioning, his technique, his mental toughness, all had been tested and barely proved sufficient, and he loved every second of it. Now he was in the semifinals, top 4. During the break before semifinals, Kaito found a quiet corner to rest. His body was tired, bruises forming where strikes had landed, but his spirit was electric. He'd won 4 matches against quality opponents. Even if he lost the next match, he'd already exceeded his own expectations. Akira appeared with water and snacks. How are you feeling? Tired. But good. Really good. Your next match is against someone from Sakura High, Akira said, checking the bracket on his phone. Not Nakamura. She's in the other semi-final bracket and won all her matches. But one of her teammates, second year, solid all-around fighter. The match was called, and Kaito returned to the mat. His opponent was someone he recognized from the joint practice session, the boy he'd drawn with before. They nodded to each other in recognition. This match was tactical and intelligent. Both fighters knew each other's capabilities from their previous encounter. Kaito opened with striking combinations, working behind his jab, mixing in low kicks. His opponent countered with good takedown defense and sharp counter punches. The first round was close, could have been scored for either fighter. Between rounds, Yamamoto-sensei leaned in. He's waiting for you to commit. Stop reaching with your punches. Get closer, make him react first. The adjustment worked. In the second round, Kaito pressed forward more aggressively, cutting angles, forcing his opponent to react. When the clinch came, Kaito controlled it better, landing scoring techniques, knees, elbows, controlling the head position. His opponent was skilled, fought intelligently, but Kaito had something extra, that Saiyan instinct to push through adversity, to find another gear when things got hard. He scored a clean throw in the final 30 seconds, advancing to a dominant position just as time expired. The judges awarded the match to Kaito. He was in the finals. As his opponent left the mat, Kaito stood there, breathing hard, barely believing it. 4 months ago, he couldn't do 15 push-ups. Now he just won 5 matches to reach a tournament final. The other semi-final match was quick and decisive. Hana Nakamura completely dominated her opponent, showcasing the technical superiority that came from years of dedicated training, which meant Kaito's final match would be against her. They had 30 minutes before the final. Kaido sat in the competitor area, trying to recover energy. His team surrounded him: Takeda-sensei, Akira, Yamamoto-sensei, even Yuki, who kept appearing with advice and encouragement. "Nakamura is good," Yamamoto-sensei said bluntly. "Better than you in almost every area. But you've come this far. Don't just survive, compete. Make her work for it. You've got heart," Yuki added. "Use that." Technical fighters sometimes struggle against opponents who refuse to quit. "Be relentless." Akira was quieter, just meeting Kaido's eyes. "Remember why you started training. Not to win tournaments. Not to prove anything to anyone else. But to discover what you're capable of. This match is that discovery." The words resonated. Kaido closed his eyes, centering himself, letting the nervousness and excitement settle into focused determination. When his name was called, he walked to the mat. Hana was already there, looking calm and focused. They bowed to each other, and for a moment, their eyes met. She nodded slightly: respect, acknowledgement, maybe even a hint of anticipation. She wanted this match too, wanted to test herself against someone who'd improved so dramatically. The referee called them to their marks. "This is the final match of the mixed division," the announcer said over the PA system. 3-minute round. "Fighters ready?" Kaido settled into his stance, feeling his heart beat steady and strong. Across from him, Hana did the same. "Hajime." The match exploded into motion. Hana was immediately faster than anyone Kaido had faced that day. Her first combination, jab, cross, hook, came with blinding speed. Kaido managed to block the first two but took the hook on his guard, the impact rattling his arm. He tried to counter, but she'd already moved, circling out, resetting. Her footwork was impeccable, always maintaining perfect distance. Kaido pressed forward, trying to close the gap, but Hana punished every commitment with sharp counter-strikes. A straight punch caught him clean on the sternum. A low kick hammered his thigh. An uppercut grazed his chin. 30 seconds in, he was already down on points. But Kaido remembered his training. Remembered Goku's endless perseverance through impossible fights. Remembered every lesson about adapting, learning, growing in the moment. He changed his approach, becoming less predictable. Feinting more. Varying his rhythm. When Hana expected him to strike, he'd level change for a takedown attempt. When she anticipated grappling, he'd snap out a quick combination. He scored his first point with a body kick that landed clean. Hana's expression shifted slightly, not concern, but increased focus. She recognized he wasn't going to be an easy victory. The match intensified. They traded techniques, both scoring, both defending. When they entered the clinch, Kaido used his size advantage, controlling Hana's posture, landing knees. But Hana's technique was superior, and she reversed positions, landing her own scoring strikes before breaking away. On the ground, after a scramble from a takedown attempt, Hana was clearly better. Her positional control was textbook perfect, but Kaido's improved defense kept him safe, preventing her from advancing or securing submissions. With 30 seconds left, they were back on their feet, both tired, both having shown their skills. Hana pressed, sensing she was ahead on points, wanting to secure the victory decisively. She landed a beautiful combination that backed Kaido toward the boundary. But Kaido remembered something Master Roshi had taught him decades ago: the fight isn't over until it's over. Never give up, never stop looking for opportunities. When Hana committed to a spinning back kick, a powerful technique but risky, Kaido saw his opening. He caught the kick, secured the leg, and drove forward for a takedown. They scrambled on the ground, and in the chaos, Kaido managed to advance to mount position. The crowd erupted. 5 seconds left. Kaido postured up, landing controlled strikes, not trying to hurt, but to score points clearly. Hana tried to escape, her technical skill obvious even in defense, but time was his ally now. The bell rang. They froze, both breathing hard, then separated and returned to their marks. Kaido's heart was pounding. He'd given everything, left it all on the mat. Win or lose, he'd competed. The judges deliberated, and the seconds stretched into eternity. Finally, the referee raised his hand to indicate the winner. Hana's hand. She won by a narrow margin. The points she'd accumulated in the first 2 minutes had been enough, even with Kaido's strong finish. Kaido felt, not disappointed, but satisfied. He'd lost to a better, more experienced fighter. But he'd made her work for it. He'd scored on her. He'd shown that 4 months of dedicated training could bridge, if not close, the gap created by years of experience. They bowed to each other, and Hannah spoke quietly, just for him. Excellent match. You pushed me harder than most of my opponents. Keep training like this, and next time might be different. Next time, Kaido agreed. As they left the mat, applause surrounded them. Kaido caught sight of his team, Akira grinning broadly, Yamamoto-sensei nodding approval, Takeda-sensei looking proud. Even his family was there in the stands, his mother wiping tears, his sister jumping and cheering, his father's normally stoic face showing clear pride. He'd lost. Placed second. Earned a silver medal. But in that moment, Kaido understood something fundamental. This wasn't about winning tournaments. It was about the journey, the growth, the discovery of what he was capable of when everything he'd once relied on was stripped away. He was becoming something new. Not Goku, the legendary warrior who could shake universes. And not just Kaido Sora, an ordinary teenager, but someone in between. Someone uniquely himself. A fighter who measured strength not in power levels but in dedication, technique, and the willingness to face challenges that pushed him to his absolute limits. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since arriving in this world, Kaido felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The week after the tournament felt strange. Kaido returned to his normal routine, early morning training with Akira school, martial arts club, evening sessions at Yamamoto's dojo. But something had shifted. The silver medal sat on his desk at home, catching light from his window. A tangible reminder of how far he'd come and how far he still had to go. Second place. Against Hana Nakamura, who'd been training since childhood, second place was an achievement. But the competitive fire that had always burned in Goku's heart, and now in Kaido's, wasn't satisfied with almost. He wanted to be better. Stronger. More skilled. You're distracted, Akira observed one morning during their training session. They were working on defensive footwork, but Kaido kept zoning out, his movements mechanical rather than engaged. Sorry, Kaido said, refocusing. Just thinking about the tournament. About what I need to improve. What you need is a break, Akira said, surprising him. You've been going hard for 4 months straight. Your body needs recovery time, and your mind needs rest. Burnout is real, even for dedicated athletes. I don't need rest. I need to get better. Akira stopped the drill, studying Kaido with those intense eyes. Listen, I get it. You lost to Nakamura, and your competitive spirit is screaming at you to train harder. But that's not how this works. You can't just grind your way to improvement. You need recovery, varied stimulus, new challenges. Like what? Akira hesitated, as if weighing whether to share something. Finally, he pulled out his phone and showed Kaido a message thread. You know how I said I train at other places besides Yamamoto's dojo? Yeah, there's this underground circuit. Not illegal exactly, but not official either. Amateur fighters who want real experience without the restrictions of sanctioned tournaments. Minimal rules, no weight classes, just skill versus skill. Kaido's interest immediately piqued. Tell me more. It happens once a month at different locations around Tokyo. Warehouse spaces, private gyms, places the organizers rent for the night. Fighters show up, matches are made based on experience level and what people are looking for. No money involved. It's purely for the love of fighting and testing yourself. And you fight in these? Sometimes. It's how I got good so fast. Tournament experience is valuable. But this circuit forces you to adapt to chaos. Different styles, different sizes, unexpected opponents. You learn fast or you get hurt. Akira's expression grew serious. But it's risky. No official oversight means if something goes wrong, there's no safety net. You have to trust your opponents and yourself to know when enough is enough. Everything about it sounded dangerous, unsanctioned, and exactly what Kaido needed. I want in. I figured you'd say that. Akira sighed. Look, you're not ready yet. These fighters are mostly in their 20s, adults with years of serious training. You held your own in a high school tournament, but this is a different level. Then I'll lose and learn from it. That's how I've always gotten stronger, by fighting people better than me. You've always? Akira caught the phrasing. You talk like you've been doing this for years. But you started training seriously 4 months ago. Kaido caught himself. He'd been thinking of Goku's decades of experience, not Kaido's brief training period. I just mean, that's my philosophy. Challenge yourself against the best, or you'll never know your limits. Akira considered this, then nodded slowly. Alright. The next event is in 2 weeks. I'll bring you as my guest. That means I'm vouching for you, so don't make me look bad. And Kaito? His tone became stern. These aren't tournament matches with points and referees. People get hurt. If you're not ready to deal with that reality, don't come. I'll be ready. Over the next 2 weeks, Kaito's training took on a new intensity. At Yamamoto's dojo, he asked to spar with the most experienced fighters, regardless of size or skill difference. He wanted to feel what it was like to be overmatched, to fight from behind, to adapt under pressure. Yamamoto-sensei noticed the shift. You're pushing hard again. Tournament wasn't enough? Second place wasn't enough, Kaido admitted. I need more experience against better opponents. Ambitious. But be careful. Ambition without wisdom leads to injury. Still, Yamamoto-sensei indulged the request, pairing Kaido with advanced students who could challenge him without endangering him. One of those students was a fighter named Ryu Ishida. Ryu was in his mid-20s, with the quiet intensity of someone who dedicated their entire adult life to martial arts. He spoke little, smiled rarely, and moved with an economy of motion that suggested deep mastery. Everything about him reminded Kaido of Piccolo. That same stoic presence, that same sense of controlled power waiting to be unleashed. Their first sparring session was humbling. Ryu didn't overpower Kaido, he simply anticipated everything. Every combination Kaido threw, Ryu had already seen the setup and moved accordingly. Every takedown attempt, Ryu stuffed effortlessly. Every defensive position, Ryu found the weakness and exploited it. It was like fighting someone who could read his mind. After the session, Kaido approached Ryu, who was cooling down with stretches. How do you do that? How do you always know what I'm going to do? Ryu looked at him with dark, assessing eyes. You telegraph. Your body shows your intention before you execute. A slight weight shift before you shoot for a takedown. Your eyes focus on the target before you strike. Your breathing changes when you're about to commit to an attack. How do I stop doing that? Years of practice. Most fighters never completely eliminate their tells. They just develop enough other skills to compensate. Ryu continued stretching, then added, but you're young. You have time to develop proper habits if you're patient. I'm not good at patience. I can tell. Was that almost a smile? You fight like you're angry at yourself. Like you're trying to prove something. That desperation makes you predictable. The observation struck deep. Kaido was trying to prove something. That he could be strong without ki, without transformations, without all the advantages his previous life had given him. That desperation was bleeding into his fighting. How do I fix it? Stop fighting yourself. Fight your opponent. Be present in the moment, not worried about proving anything. Ryu finished his stretches and stood. You have good instincts. Better than most beginners, but instinct without discipline is just chaos. Learn to quiet your mind. Over the following days, Kaido tried to apply Ryu's advice. During sparring, he'd catch himself tensing up, trying too hard, and force himself to relax. To breathe. To simply respond to what his opponent gave him rather than trying to impose his will. It was harder than any physical training. At school, the martial arts club had returned to its normal, casual pace after the tournament excitement. But Kaido found he could barely focus during practice. The school club had served its purpose, giving him a foundation, introducing him to Akira, preparing him for competition. But now it felt limiting. Like trying to continue training in the hyperbolic time chamber after you'd already mastered everything it could teach you. Takeda-sensei noticed his wandering attention. Sora, you seem distant lately. Everything okay? Just thinking about my training, Kaido said honestly. Trying to figure out how to keep improving. The tournament was just the beginning, Takeda-sensei assured him. There will be other competitions, other opportunities. Don't rush the journey. But everyone kept telling him not to rush, and Kaido couldn't make them understand. He'd already lived decades. He'd already experienced the long journey from weakness to godhood. He didn't have patience for the slow path because he knew what the destination looked like. And every day spent at this level felt like wasted time. Except, that wasn't quite true, was it? In his previous life, the journey had been rushed. Urgent. There was always another threat, another enemy, another reason to push past his limits immediately. He never really savored the process of getting stronger. He just chased the next transformation, the next power-up. This time, forced to progress slowly, he was actually understanding the fundamentals in a way he never had before. How leverage worked. How timing created opportunities. How positioning determined outcomes. All the technical details he glossed over when he could just power through with overwhelming force. Maybe the slow path had value he'd never appreciated. The night of the underground circuit event arrived. Akira picked Kaido up at 8 p.m., and they took a train to an industrial district on Tokyo's outskirts. The area was mostly warehouses and light manufacturing facilities, quiet at night with few pedestrians. Nervous? Akira asked as they walked. Excited, Kaido said, which was more accurate. His body was humming with anticipation, that familiar pre-fight energy that had once preceded battles against universe-threatening enemies. The scale was different now, but the feeling was the same. They arrived at an unmarked warehouse, its windows dark but light visible through cracks in the structure. Music thumped from inside, not loud enough to draw complaints, but enough to create atmosphere. Akira knocked in a specific pattern. The door opened, revealing a man in his 30s with cauliflower ears and the build of a heavyweight fighter. Akira. Been a while. They exchanged a complicated handshake. This your friend? Kaido Sora. He's with me. The man studied Kaido with a fighter's assessment, noting his build, his posture, the confidence in his stance. He looks young, 16. But he placed second in the Tokyo Metropolitan Tournament last month. He can handle himself. His funeral. Entry fee is 2,000 yen. No phones, no recording. What happens here stays here. Akira paid for both of them, and they entered the warehouse. Inside was unlike anything Kaido had experienced in this world. The space had been transformed into a makeshift fight venue, mats on the floor, heavy bags hanging from the ceiling, a makeshift ring in the center. About 50 people were present, mostly fighters in their 20s and 30s, though Kaido spotted a few who looked even older. The atmosphere was electric. Groups stood around chatting, but their conversations had the technical specificity of serious practitioners, discussing techniques, analyzing recent matches, debating strategies. Some shadowboxed in corners. Others stretched or hit the bags. A few sparred lightly, warming up. This is incredible, Kaido murmured, taking it all in. Welcome to the real martial arts community, Akira said. These people don't fight for trophies or recognition. They fight because they love it, because they need to test themselves, because fighting is who they are. A woman approached them, early 30s, with the lean, scarred build of someone who'd seen countless matches. Akira. Didn't expect you tonight. Thought you were too busy with your high school protege to slum it with us anymore. Misaki, this is Kaido. The protege in question. Misaki's eyes sharpened, studying Kaido with renewed interest. The kid who went to finals against Nakamura? Heard about that. She said you actually pushed her? That's rare. You know Hana? Everyone knows Nakamura. She trains here sometimes when she wants real challenges. Misaki gestured around the warehouse. Most of the best amateur fighters in Tokyo come through here eventually. This is where reputations are built. Throughout the night, Kaido watched matches unfold in the makeshift ring. The fights were different from tournament bouts. Longer, more brutal, with minimal restrictions. Strikes that would be illegal in competition landed freely. Submissions were held longer, forcing fighters to tap or risk injury. Blood was common. So was exhaustion. Fighters pushing past the point where referees would normally stop a match. But despite the violence, there was respect. Fighters bowed before and after. Winners helped losers up. Between matches, competitors from earlier bouts would offer advice and encouragement to those about to fight. It reminded Kaido of the World Martial Arts Tournament from his youth, before it became just a nostalgic tradition, when it had been a gathering of serious fighters testing their skills. Want to fight? Akira asked after they'd been watching for about an hour. That's why I'm here. All right. Let me find you a match. Akira spoke with the organizers, a group of experienced fighters who seemed to run the event by consensus rather than formal authority. They discussed Kaido's experience level, watched him shadowbox briefly, then nodded. "We've got someone," one of them said. "First-timer like you, been training about a year. Good technical base, competitive but not vicious. Should be a good learning experience." Kaido's opponent was a college student named Kenji, maybe 20 years old, with the rangy build of a natural athlete. They met at the edge of the ring, and Kenji offered a respectful bow. "First time here?" he asked. "Yeah. You, third time. Still trying to get my first win." Kenji smiled ruefully. "Good luck." They entered the ring, and someone acted as referee, not with official authority, but just to start the match and watch for serious injuries. No eye gouges, no groin strikes, no biting. Everything else is fair game. Fight until someone submits, gets knocked out, or I stop it. "Ready?" They nodded. "Fight." Kenji came forward immediately with a measuring jab. Kaido slipped it, countered with his own straight punch. They exchanged combinations, both showing decent technique, both testing each other's defenses. It quickly became clear that Kenji had more experience. His movement was smoother, his combinations more polished. He landed a solid hook that made Kaido's head ring, followed by a low kick that bit into his thigh. But Kaido had something Kenji didn't, that Saiyan instinct to adapt mid-battle, to learn from each exchange and adjust. The second time Kenji threw that hook-low kick combination, Kaido anticipated it, checked the kick, and countered with a knee that caught Kenji in the ribs. First real damage scored. The match intensified. They clinched, both working for dominant positions. Kenji had better technique, but Kaido's raw strength, built through 4 months of dedicated conditioning, gave him an advantage in close. He landed knees and elbows, scoring damage that had Kenji backing away. When they separated, Kenji switched tactics, shooting for a takedown. His technique was excellent, catching Kaido's legs and driving him to the mat. Suddenly they were grappling, and Kenji showed his real skill. He passed Kaido's guard smoothly, advanced a mount, and started working for a submission. This was Kaido's weakest area, and Kenji exploited it ruthlessly. He threatened an armbar, forcing Kaido to defend, then transitioned to a triangle choke attempt. Kaido's neck was caught, and pressure started building. In a tournament, this might be where he'd tap. But here, with pride on the line and the crowd watching, Kaido refused to quit. He remembered Akira's drills on triangle defense. Posture up, create space, stack the opponent. He executed the escape barely, his neck burning from the pressure. But he got free, scrambled back to his feet. Kenji rose too, breathing hard now. Both fighters were tired, but the match wasn't over. They circled, and Kaido could see Kenji's confidence had taken a hit. He'd gone for his best submission, and Kaido had escaped. That created doubt, and doubt created openings. When they engaged again, Kaido pressed forward more aggressively. He was the one who'd started training later, who was younger, who should have been more tired. But that Saiyan biology, if it had translated to this body at all, gave him endurance that seemed to surprise Kenji. Kaido landed a hard combination, hook to the body, uppercut to the head, that visibly hurt Kenji. He followed with a takedown of his own, his improving wrestling skills sufficient to bring Kenji down. On the ground, he advanced to mount position, remembering everything Akira had taught him about control and pressure. He postured up and landed controlled strikes, not trying to injure seriously, but making clear his dominance. Kenji tried to escape, showed good defensive technique, but Kaido maintained position. After 30 seconds of ground control, the ref stepped in. "That's enough. Good match." They separated, both exhausted, both marked by the fight. Kenji's eye was swelling. Kaido's ribs were bruised. But when they stood and bowed, there was mutual respect. "You're tough," Kenji said, breathing hard. "That triangle should have finished you." "Your technique is really good," Kaido replied honestly. "I got lucky with the escape. Luck is part of fighting." Good match. As Kaido left the ring, Akira met him with water and a towel. "Solid first showing. You looked rough in the middle but recovered well. How do you feel?" "Alive," Kaido said, and it was true. That match had pushed him harder than any tournament bout. No time limits, no points to hide behind, just pure combat until someone proved superior. When can I fight again? Akira laughed. Maybe not tonight. But there's another event next month. You'll have plenty of opportunities. Throughout the rest of the night, Kaido watched more matches and talked with other fighters. The community was welcoming once they accepted you'd proven yourself. Fighters shared techniques, discussed strategies, offered to train together outside these events. He met veterans who'd been fighting for decades, never professionally but with dedication that rivaled any pro. He met young fighters like himself, hungry to improve, willing to take losses if it meant learning. He met specialists in different styles, BJJ black belts, Muay Thai champions, wrestlers who could ragdoll much larger opponents. Each conversation expanded his understanding of what fighting could be in this world without ki. Around midnight, a match was announced that drew everyone's attention. Ryu Ishida vs. Takeshi Yamada. The crowd murmured with excitement. Both names clearly carried weight. Ryu appeared, the same stoic fighter from Yamamoto's dojo. His opponent, Takeshi, was a powerfully built man in his late 20s, with the thick neck and sloping shoulders of a serious grappler. When they faced each other in the ring, the atmosphere changed. This wasn't a learning experience, or a friendly test. This was a serious match between elite fighters. The match started, and Kaido immediately understood why everyone had been excited. Both fighters operated on a different level than anything he'd seen that night. Their techniques were refined, their timing impeccable, their strategies sophisticated. When they exchanged strikes, each movement had purpose, setting up angles, creating reactions, opening opportunities 3 or 4 moves ahead. Takeshi shot for a takedown with explosive power. Ryu's defense was textbook perfect, sprawling and threatening a guillotine choke. Takeshi defended and they scrambled, both showing incredible technical skill, until they separated and reset. They struck again, and Ryu landed a beautiful combination, jab, low kick, overhand right, that snapped Takeshi's head back. But Takeshi ate it, closed distance, secured a clinch, and started working for a throw. The battle went back and forth, either able to dominate. On the feet, Ryu had a slight advantage with superior striking. On the ground, Takeshi was marginally better with his grappling, but both were so skilled that advantages were minimal and temporary. The match went 15 minutes, far longer than standard tournament bouts, and both fighters were exhausted by the end, their technical perfection degrading into pure will and determination. Finally, Ryu caught Takeshi in a rear naked choke during a scramble. Takeshi fought the submission for nearly 30 seconds, refusing to tap, his face turning red from the pressure. But eventually, consciousness began slipping, and he tapped 3 times rapidly. Ryu released immediately, helping Takeshi sit up as he recovered. The crowd erupted in applause. When both fighters stood and bowed, the respect was palpable. They'd pushed each other to absolute limits, shown the highest level of skill Kaido had witnessed in this world, and done it without animosity or ego. After the match, Kaido found Ryu cooling down in a corner. "That was incredible," he said simply. Ryu looked at him, recognition flickering. "You're from Yamamoto's dojo." "Kaido, right?" "Yeah. I fought here tonight for the first time." "I know. I watched." Ryu wiped sweat from his face with a towel. "You showed good heart. Your technique needs work, but you don't give up. That matters more than people think. Your match with Takeshi, that's the level I want to reach. That kind of skill, that takes years. Takeshi and I have both been training seriously for over a decade. Don't rush the process." Everyone kept telling him not to rush, but Kaido couldn't help his impatience. Still, watching Ryu's match had been educational in ways he couldn't fully articulate. He'd seen what human fighting skill looked like at its peak. No supernatural powers, no energy attacks, just 2 people who'd refined their crafts to the highest level.